What's going on, YouTube? Daredevil is back. Murdoch is back. That is what we were talking about here today in this video. I want to know all of your thoughts about it, and I hope you stick around to hear all of mine. And where I want you to put those thoughts, down in the comments below. And while you're there, make sure you're liking, you're subscribing, and you're hitting the bell for the next video that comes through so you know anytime I'm talking about all the good stuff that is movie and television. Alright? And until then, you know where to find me. Daredevil, Born Again, started last night at 9 p.m. my time, because I'm on the East Coast. 9 p.m., they dropped 2 episodes, which I thought was a really good plan. I think that works very well. I kind of like that formula in television in general, that we're seeing a lot lately with streaming, is they'll drop the first 2 episodes to give you the hook and then what comes after. So I really, really like that formula. Now, I'm just going to give everybody a heads up who's watching this now or on the video. I am going to talk about it in full spoiler detail. And I'm going to start with probably the biggest spoiler of the first 2 episodes. So that being said, that is your warning, okay? There are spoilers coming. If you haven't watched episode 1 and episode 2 of Daredevil Born Again, save this video, go watch it, come back when you're ready to talk about the spoilers. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. They made such a bold move opening up the new series with what looks like a harmonized Matt Murdock with his 2 friends to have Bullseye murder Foggy Nelson. It was such a bold move and so well done. There are things, the fight itself, there are portions of it I have to rewatch, but I'm not the biggest fan of. I enjoyed it, but it felt very almost CGI animated. Some portions of it, especially when they're fighting in the smoke in the bar, particularly the beginning half of the fight. But the way that they choreographed the fight, to as he's fighting, you're hearing Foggy's heartbeat slowly decrease throughout the fight, is so good. And I think killing him was such a bold move, and I love Foggy. He is like a shining beacon in the original 3 seasons of the show. I am comfortable with this decision because I believe it gives us a motive for where Matt is right now, because where we left him off, it felt very much like he was at peace with his religious side, his lawyer side, and his vigilante side. So it feels really good to give us something that allows us as the viewer watch Matt question once again where and how he should be spending his time, essentially. Something I wanted to talk about in that scene as well was there's this incredible frame rate moment where we're sitting in the bar, we're having a good time. Foggy steps out to answer the phone, and you have the screen is like dialed in. You have the black bars. I'm blanking on what that's called. But then, for the first time that they show us in this new show, him using his ability to really hone in and hear things. You hear it start to dial in all the volume, and then it opens to a widescreen, which is just it's so well done. It opens to this widescreen to show that he's really taking all of this volume and all of these noise, all these different elements and these conversations. And then once his ears and the camera finds Foggy, it zooms back in and it cuts back to that screen so it can dial in, and it's telling you, the viewer, that Matt has now honed in on that conversation. And that shot is so that shot was so saucy. I knew when that shot happened that I had an idea that they knew how they were going to handle this, and I felt like they knew what they were doing with Daredevil himself, particularly just strictly the character, right? The fight scene with Bullseye is great. I think it's middle of the road as far as MCU television or MCU in general fight goes, because like I said, I have an issue with the fight kind of in that first chunk of it when they're fighting in the smoke. It feels very not real in the sense of you can almost see the animation to the fighting of it all. That may not make sense, but if you've seen the episode, you know what I'm talking about. But generally, the fight as a whole was really quite good, and I really like how you really see Matt's perseverance through his like shock and anger of him shooting Foggy. How many things he gets hit with, and he just keeps barreling. Like he keeps fighting him, and he doesn't take anything out. He's got knives running all through his armor and his back, and he's still going and going. And that final moment that we finally get to see the shot from the trailer with the helmet falling, where he hears Foggy's heart stop, and he's got Bullseye on the edge, and he asks him like why, and he just like smiles and laughs. And in that moment, Matt finally, even though he didn't succeed, he finally breaks and crosses that line where he tried to kill someone and he just throws him off the roof. And that's when I knew what the showrunner had been saying, where this show is going to be brutal, right? This is going to be very, very brutal. So that was great. I thought they opened it very, very well. Again, they haven't really given us a pinpoint as to where this takes place. The only thing definitively I could say is that it probably takes place it definitely takes place post No Way Home. And I say that because of Fisk mentioning Spider-Man, but we'll get to that in a minute. So they do the year later flash forward, and that's when you kind of see where Matt's at, how he's dealing and coping, and then they kind of bring Kingpin. Now, what I will say is a lot has happened to the Kingpin character, particularly more so than Matt, since the final season of Daredevil on Netflix. He had the ending of Hawkeye. He had the whole thing with Echo, which I like kind of brushed the Cole's notes before I watched. I heard it set right after Agents. Agatha All Along. That makes sense. And they do a good job of, in my opinion, as long as you know the Cole's notes of Echo, you get a pretty good sense of them picking up where they left off, where Echo essentially healing him of his past traumas and essentially like sort of shattering him psychologically, how he's had to recuperate from the fights and that for so long, and he's not really this currently anyway. He's not this person anymore, this direct to villainy violence anymore. And I love how they set that up, whereas they show him, he suits up, and then you go and you see Vanessa, who is handling the illegalness of everything, which I really, really enjoyed about season 3 of Daredevil, where she kind of just full foot in, like, I don't want to just be told about that life. I want to be a part of that life. I want to be a part of all of your life. So they set the scene perfectly, where the door opens to where she's having the meeting, and you hear him walking down the hall, and he steps in, and everybody, like, the fear he brings, that type of aura he brings to the room. A lot of aura farming in this, by the way. The aura he brings into that room just makes the conversation stop, and everyone gets up and leaves. And then he sits down, and he's telling Vanessa how he's got the signatures to vote or to be on the ballot, and he basically doesn't want to be that person anymore. He's not that person anymore. He doesn't want to be connected to anything illegal. Obviously, we see further down that he is already kind of skating back into that, which, no surprise, it's the Kingpin. So, boom. They set the two characters up. I think they do really well. What I really, really appreciate about this episode, two episodes, but right now just the first particularly, is runtime. I hope the runtime stays in this zone for the whole season. An hour was perfect, and I like that in the first episode, we set up Matt's new conflict. We flash forward. We see where Matt's life is now with his own practice with Foggy's friend and his friend now. We see, and then we see Wilson and his setup. And I like that the season isn't about him trying to get elected as mayor. He is mayor. By the end of the first episode, he is elected. And I really, really like that. I was not worried, but I was unsure how long they were going to play him trying to get elected. So I really like that we jumped right into that, and now we're beyond that. The coolest two things about this episode, in my opinion. One, the conversation that they show in the trailer is as good as you think it would be. It is great. It's this great meeting of the minds and this understanding of this is where you are and this is where I am. And my girlfriend and I, we talked for a little bit about how she had read a review that said there's no religious undertones or something along that line. And we talked a little bit about that, how I didn't necessarily agree, and maybe it means more literal, like he literally doesn't step in a church. Because in theory, when you think about it, as far as religious thing goes, I don't believe his mom is going to be a part of this show. And obviously the priest that he used to talk to that really formulated a lot of those deeper, long-lasting religious conversations is dead. But I still firmly believe that he was going to be about religion. And lo and behold, he is. Because in that conversation, he says some of the most, excuse my language, Twitch and YouTube, fuck around and find out shit that I've heard in a minute. Matt says so many clean things, and in that conversation, he says it, I remember so clearly. He says, as a Catholic, I was born and raised to believe in redemption. So if you say you're a new man, fine, cool. But I was also raised to believe in retribution. So if you step out of line, I will be there. And it is the cleanest thing I have ever seen in my life. It's so clean. And then even Wilson, back and forth, saying things about Foggy, saying things about where they have been. Them even like having a laugh is so... It's like this, we have this deep-rooted, twisted history. And we're kind of not moved beyond it, but we've grown so much since then. So it's really cool to see them play off each other. And I really, really hope we get more of that this season, because it's just so good. And I just can't wait. So that's my personal favorite scene of the first episode. The best, in my opinion, the best shots, I guess, since it's technically camera cuts, is Matt is taking his date home. After he takes his date home, you can hear the city and the civilians starting to celebrate this victory of Wilson becoming mayor, right? And you can see as the episode is going on what Wilson always does to Matt, which is basically grinds his gears internally, right? You can see it festering, and it has this incredible shot this incredible shot where the camera's coming from right here, right? And it's shooting, and you see the red lights passing Matt, and it's just illuminating red, and then it swaps to Kingpin. It's the same shot, but from the other side of the face, and it's the blue lights illuminating him and showing their opposition in color. It is. That's why I love film, and that's why I love just watching that stuff come to life, where it's like all of this visual storytelling without saying anything. It is so good, and then the way they accumulate all of that is they put it back on Matt, and it's a front-facing shot, just like this. And one half of him is in the shadow, and the other half is still where the light is illuminating, and it's just doing the same thing. It's flashing red, and it's just this. Oh God, it's so good. It's such a great first episode. I thought it's a great first episode. The bold move of killing Foggy. I think that's one of those things where I can see some big fans of the original taking issue with that and having a hard time continuing to watch the show, especially considering it feels like Karen isn't going to play a huge role in it, mainly because she doesn't live in New York anymore. So I think that all of that is going to play a role into why some people maybe won't get on board, and I can understand that. If you were there for that thing that you felt like you were promised, and that thing was essentially taken away from you in the first episode, I can understand that feeling upset that way, because I've been there before. But man, what a good first setup. And then we get the second episode. We get to see Kingpin's first days in office and how he's trying to sway more opinions in his favor, whether it be from other political faces, the commissioner of the police department, or just the people. They do this great thing where he just gets out of the car and he's like, fill this hole, like that's blocking the road and causing all this congestion. Oh, we're waiting on the permits. Consider it approved. You've got the equipment, you've got the manpower, fill it right now. Boom. And it's one of those things where, in hindsight, in isolated incidents, without getting the whole picture that we as the viewer get, you can understand how, well, I can't personally, because obviously he's still a criminal. He still did all of those heinous, horrible things that he did in the last 3 seasons and everything up till then. But it's those things where it's like he's showing the public the best sides of him, right? And it's a great allegory for current political climate. It's so interesting, the timing and all of that, and how they got to here based on after scrapping the original show. Anyway, so you've got that. And then the other thing that they're building up at the same time, because one of Fisk's big running points is stopping vigilantism in New York as a whole. And this is what I was talking about earlier. The coolest thing that happens, and I said this to my girlfriend right before it happened, literally the scene before, I said, I don't know how this show ends. I really hope that there's some way where this ends and he's still mayor, because I would love to see him casually be mayor in the background of Spider-Man 4. Boom, the very next scene happens. He gets elected and he's speaking, he's addressing the citizens of New York. And he immediately talks about vigilantism. And he brings up the Punisher, he brings up Spider-Man, and he brings up Daredevil. And it was like, oh yeah, we're in there. So then the second episode, it sets up this great thing that Matt has to essentially, he gets involved in, because he's Matt. He's a good guy. He's trying to be a good lawyer to people who are down and out in their luck, or they don't have the best odds, so he can help them get a proper fight in the legal system and in court. And he runs across the White Tiger. Just sheerly out of coincidence, this guy runs into some dirty cops just beating up some guy. They haven't elaborated as to why yet. And talk about the show being brutal. In fighting them, one of them goes for him, misses, boom, gets hit by a train. Like, it was the most, that was the most brutal thing that I've seen Daredevil do in at least a couple seasons, with the exception of things that happened with Punisher in season 2. Because I was not expecting that one bit, and it was so, shock and awe. It blew me away. So to see it evolve into how that was great. And then him finding out that he's White Tiger, him getting the court, the judge, to make that inadmissible was such a... I already like how this is splitting the dynamic. We're seeing Matt be a lawyer and a good one, and we're building back up to him putting on the suit. because you get this build up. He's looking for the guy that he saved on the tramway, the train station, that the cops say don't exist. They find him. Matt barely gets there first. And this incredible scene happens where he gets him out there. The cops bust in and he's just standing there, aura farming again. And he basically tells them, like, oh, you're looking for the guy you said doesn't exist? Yeah, he's already gone. So they try to persuade him because obviously they think he's just not persuade, push him or press him for it. Because they think he's just a blind guy, right? And they start beating his ass. And he doesn't do anything. He's not fighting back immediately. It's only in that moment when he gets on his knees and they start talking about killing him. And as soon as he hears them talking about it, you hear him, don't do this, don't do this, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this. And it felt very much like this multi-layered thing. Like, to them, it's a man pleading for his life. For him, it's a two-part, it felt like. One, he's pleading, you don't understand, you don't want to do this. I haven't taken action against you by who I really am because you haven't tried to kill me yet. Once you put that gun to my head, things are going to change. And the other half is, please don't do this, you don't want to do this, almost in talking to himself, because he knows if they get to that point, he needs to live. He will have to go and do those things and commit an act of violence on them that he's been trying to stray away from for the past year, right? And it just breaks into this incredible, in my opinion, this is the better fight scene, even though it's incredibly quick. It's like 25 seconds of the first two episodes. And it breaks into this incredible quick pace, like him easily just dogging them. Three-piece, gets this guy in an armbar, cracks his arm, just fucking destroys it. And it is so, they know what they're doing. The brutality is going to be there all season long. They hinted at it in interviews, they hinted at it in the trailer, and it's going to be there all season long. Now, 2 or 3 things I just want to touch on real quick before we wrap this up is what's coming next. One is I'm very incredibly satisfied with the first 2 episodes, but I'm trying to mediate my excitement because the MCU, as far as television goes, they have a tendency to start strong and not always hold the bar the whole way through. 2, I'm excited to see how they introduce Muse. I'm very interested when that's going to happen. I would had to guess it would be next episode since there's only 9 episodes, because I feel like he's going to be the thing that really swings everything together after with Fisk and Daredevil. And 3, I'm really excited to see how far they take the brutality. Not that I need it, but I want it. And I'm really, really excited to see how they take the brutality when the Punisher comes back. I cannot wait for that. I'm excited for so much. I just really hope they can keep the pace as far as runtime and as far as excitement and electricity when I'm watching. This is a great first 2 episodes, and I hope they can keep this level of excitement and intensity and good vibes for the rest of the season. That being said, how did you guys feel about the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again? Did you love it? Are you excited that Matt Murdock is back? Are you upset about some of the story decisions that they made, bringing the character back and those characters and starting to write off and kill off a couple of those ones we're really comfortable with? How did you feel? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you excited for next week? Are you excited to be watching Daredevil again? You guys know where I want you to talk about it down below. And until next week, because we will be talking more Daredevil all months long, I will be right here. And if I'm not here, you know where to find me. Until then.